in a small snowy town, a lonely widow, Linda, rescues a golden retriever, Bella, and her 3 vulnerable puppies during a harsh winter. Overcoming immense challenges, Linda nurtures them back to health, discovering renewed purpose and joy in her life. Bella's resilience inspires Linda to establish a foster program for animals in need, turning her once quiet farmhouse into a sanctuary of hope. As the puppies find loving homes and Bella thrives, Linda's story spreads, encouraging her community to embrace compassion and kindness. Together, Linda and Bella transform countless lives, proving that even the smallest acts of love can make a big difference. What do you think about Linda and Bella's incredible journey? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to DG Story for more heartwarming stories like this. Your support inspires us to keep creating. The small town of Coldridge, nestled in the heart of Wyoming, was in the grip of a harsh winter. Snow blanketed the rolling hills and frosted pine trees, leaving the world silent except for the occasional whistle of the icy wind. Linda Harper sat by the window of her old farmhouse, a steaming cup of coffee warming her hands. At 65, she had grown accustomed to the solitude that had defined her life for the past decade. The house, though quaint and sturdy, was a far cry from the lively home it once had been. Once filled with laughter and warmth, it now held only echoes of memories she tried not to dwell on too often. Pictures of her late husband, Jack, and her son, Michael, lined the mantel above the fireplace. Jack had passed away from a sudden heart attack years ago, and Michael, her only child, had tragically died in a car accident shortly after. Linda sighed deeply, her breath misting the cold air by the frosted windowpane. Outside, the wind howled through the barren trees of the forest that bordered her property. It was a typical winter morning in Coldridge, bitterly cold, eerily still, and overwhelmingly lonely. But today, something felt different. As Linda sat sipping her coffee, a faint sound broke the stillness. It was distant and weak, almost imperceptible beneath the wind. She set her cup down and leaned closer to the window. There it was again, a faint, high-pitched whimper. Curiosity stirred in her chest. What on earth could that be? She murmured to herself, pulling on her heavy coat and boots. She braced against the chill as she stepped outside. The cold was biting, stinging her cheeks and filling her lungs with icy air. The sound came again, now slightly clearer, coming from the edge of the forest. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she trudged forward, scanning the tree-line for the source of the noise. As she approached a thicket of bushes near the base of an old oak tree, Linda froze. Emerging from the brush was a golden retriever, thin and trembling, her once shiny coat matted and dull. The dog staggered forward on unsteady legs, her amber eyes locked on Linda's with a mix of fear and hope. Behind her, 3 small puppies stumbled through the snow, their tiny bodies barely able to keep up. Linda's heart clenched at the sight. The mother dog was clearly in dire condition. Her ribs were visible through her thin fur, and her breath came in shallow pants. The puppies, though alert, were shivering violently, their tiny paws sinking into the deep snow. "Oh, my goodness," Linda whispered, her voice trembling. She knelt slowly, trying not to startle them. "What happened to you all?" The mother dog hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking between Linda and her puppies. Then, as if mustering her last ounce of strength, she took a step closer and collapsed in the snow. Her puppies immediately huddled around her, whimpering softly. Linda's instincts kicked in. "All right," she said, her voice firm despite the lump forming in her throat. "I can't leave you out here. Come on, let's get you all inside." Moving quickly but carefully, Linda removed her scarf and wrapped 2 of the puppies in it. She picked up the 3rd puppy in her gloved hands and placed it inside her coat to keep it warm. The mother dog, now too weak to move, watched Linda with tired eyes. "You're coming too," Linda assured her. She ran back to the house and grabbed an old blanket. Returning to the dogs, She draped it over the mother and managed to lift her into her arms. Though the dog was light from malnutrition, carrying her through the snow was no easy feat. By the time Linda reached the warmth of her home, her arms ached and her breath came in labored gasps. She gently laid the mother dog on a soft rug near the fireplace and placed the puppies beside her. The heat from the fire seemed to revive them slightly, and the puppies stirred, their tiny bodies curling against their mother. Linda knelt beside them, her hand trembling as she stroked the mother dog's head. "You're safe now," she said softly. The dog opened her eyes and looked at Linda with what seemed like gratitude before closing them again. Rising to her feet, Linda grabbed a bowl and filled it with warm water. She placed it near the mother dog, who weakly lapped at it. The puppies began to whine, their cries weak but insistent. "You must be starving," Linda murmured. She searched her pantry for anything suitable and found a can of chicken broth. After warming it on the stove, she poured a small amount into a dish and offered it to the mother dog. The dog hesitated, then began to eat slowly, her movements careful but determined. As Linda watched the small family settle into their temporary refuge, a sense of purpose began to stir within her. She had spent years in solitude, her life reduced to a series of repetitive tasks and quiet evenings alone. But now, with these helpless creatures depending on her, something inside her shifted. For the first time in years, Linda felt needed. Inside the warm glow of the farmhouse, the small family of dogs began to stir. Linda, now acutely aware of their fragile condition, wasted no time ensuring their safety and comfort. The mother dog, whom Linda decided to call Bella, remained weak and trembling despite the warmth of the fire. The three puppies, two golden like Bella and one with a patch of white on its chest, huddled together, their tiny whimpers tugging at Linda's heart. She crouched down, stroking Bella's matted fur gently. "You're in bad shape, girl," she murmured, "but we're going to fix that. I promise." Linda's mind raced as she surveyed the situation. She knew Bella and the puppies needed more than just warmth. Food, hydration, and rest were critical, but the storm outside was worsening. The radio had warned of an approaching blizzard, and now the wind howled against the windows, making it impossible to leave the house. For years, Linda had relied on her resourcefulness to get through tough winters, but this time was different. These dogs were depending on her, and she couldn't afford to fail them. Throughout the day, Linda worked tirelessly. She fed the puppies small drops of warm milk using a baking dropper she found in her kitchen. First, they struggled, their tiny mouths too weak to latch. But with patience and persistence, they began to drink. Bella, though barely able to move, kept her eyes on Linda the entire time, as if silently pleading for her baby's survival. Linda warmed more chicken broth for Bella, coaxing her to eat. Bella's movements were sluggish, and she barely managed a few licks before collapsing back onto the rug. Linda frowned, worry gnawing at her. "You're so weak," she whispered, "but you've been so brave. Just hang on a little longer." As night fell, the farmhouse grew quieter, save for the crackling of the fire and the occasional whimper from the puppies. Linda sat beside Bella, wrapping herself in an old quilt as she kept watch over the fragile family. She couldn't help but feel a deep connection forming between her and Bella. Both of them had faced loss, loneliness, and the harsh realities of life. In Bella's eyes, Linda saw a reflection of her own struggles, a shared resilience that bound them together. Around midnight, the situation took a dire turn. Bella's breathing grew shallow, and her body shivered uncontrollably despite the warmth of the fire. Linda panicked. She had been so focused on the puppies that she hadn't noticed Bella's condition deteriorating. "No, no, no," Linda muttered, her hands trembling as she knelt beside Bella. "You're not leaving me. Not now." She grabbed a blanket and wrapped it tightly around Bella, trying to retain as much heat as possible. Linda's mind raced for solutions. She remembered an old first aid kit she had stored in the pantry years ago. Rummaging through the dusty shelves, she found it buried behind jars of preserves. Inside, she discovered a small bottle of electrolyte solution, something Jack had used for their farm animals. Returning to Bella, Linda gently tilted her head and used a syringe to administer the liquid. Bella flinched slightly but didn't resist. Linda stroked her fur, whispering words of encouragement. "You're a fighter, Bella. You've made it this far. Don't give up now." The hours dragged on, and Linda refused to leave Bella's side. The puppies stirred restlessly, their soft cries breaking the heavy silence. Linda alternated between feeding the puppies and checking Bella's breathing, her exhaustion mounting with each passing moment. As dawn broke, the blizzard outside began to wane, and a faint light seeped through the frosted windows. Linda, slumped in her rocking chair with Bella resting beside her, barely noticed the change. She was too focused on the rhythmic rise and fall of Bella's chest. Then, something remarkable happened. Bella stirred, her head lifting slightly as she let out a weak but audible whine. Linda's eyes snapped open, relief flooding her chest. "You're awake," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh, thank God." Bella's gaze met Linda's, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of life in her amber eyes. She nudged Linda's hand weakly, as if to say thank you. Linda fed Bella another small portion of broth, and this time, the dog managed to eat a bit more. The puppies, sensing their mother's recovery, crawled closer to her, their tiny bodies pressing against her side. The sight brought a smile to Linda's face. "You're not out of the woods yet," she said softly, "but you're a fighter, Bella, and so am I." The storm had left a thick blanket of snow across the landscape, making the roads impassable. Linda knew she couldn't rely on anyone for help just yet. If Bella and the puppies were going to survive, it would be up to her. With a renewed sense of purpose, Linda set about fortifying their temporary sanctuary. She found an old quilt to create a larger, more comfortable bed for the dogs. She chopped extra firewood to keep the house warm and prepared a stock of homemade broth and milk to sustain Bella and her puppies. For the first time in years, Linda felt alive. The monotony of her solitary life had been replaced by a sense of urgency and responsibility. These fragile lives depended on her, and she was determined not to let them down. As night fell once again, Linda sat by the fire, watching Bella and her puppies sleep peacefully. Despite the challenges ahead, she felt a flicker of hope. This was just the beginning of their journey, and Linda was ready to face whatever came next. Linda woke early the next morning to the sound of soft whimpers coming from the living room. The fire she had stoked the night before had burned down to embers, leaving the room colder than she'd intended. Pulling on her wool cardigan, she hurried to check on her new guests. The golden retriever, whom Linda had tentatively started calling Bella, was lying on the rug near the fireplace. Her 3 puppies were nestled close to her belly, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. Linda crouched down beside Bella and gently stroked her head. Bella's amber eyes flickered open, and she let out a soft whine. "You're okay, Bella," Linda said softly. "I'll take care of you all." The puppies began to stir, their whimpers turning into louder cries. Linda realized they were hungry again. The thought made her heart ache. Bella was in no condition to nurse them, and Linda had no experience raising puppies. She hurried to the kitchen, hoping to find something that might help. Linda rummaged through her cabinets and finally found an old dropper she used for baking. She warmed a small pot of milk and tested the temperature before using the dropper to feed the puppies one by one. The first puppy, a little black-furred one she had started calling Charlie, took to the milk eagerly, his tiny mouth opening wide. Daisy, the smallest of the 3 with a soft cream-colored coat, followed, though she was more hesitant. Finn, the largest and most active of the trio, squirmed in her hands but drank the milk greedily. As she fed the puppies, Linda felt a surge of both relief and anxiety. They were alive, but their fragility was a constant reminder of how easily things could go wrong. When the puppies were finally full and settled, Linda turned her attention back to Bella. The golden retriever had barely moved since the night before. Her breathing was shallow, and she refused the small pieces of boiled chicken Linda offered. Concerned, Linda sat beside her and placed a hand on her side. Bella's body was warm, too warm. "You've got a fever, don't you?" Linda murmured. Panic began to creep into her chest. She needed help. But the snowstorm that had raged through the night had buried the roads in thick drifts. The small town of Coldridge was miles away, and Linda's old pickup truck wouldn't make it in these conditions. She sat back on her heels, trying to think. "All right, Linda," she said aloud to herself. "You've been through worse. You can handle this." Her mind raced as she remembered the first aid kit she kept in the hall closet. It wasn't much, but it might have something useful. Linda retrieved the kit and rummaged through its contents, pulling out a thermometer and a bottle of aspirin. After some coaxing, she managed to take Bella's temperature. It confirmed her suspicion. Bella's fever was dangerously high. Linda crushed half an aspirin into powder and mixed it with water, hoping it would bring the fever down. Gently, she held Bella's head and used the dropper to administer the mixture. "Come on, girl," Linda whispered. "You've got to fight this." The rest of the day was a blur of constant care. Linda fed the puppies every few hours, cleaned their fur with a damp cloth, and kept the fire roaring to stave off the biting cold. Bella remained weak but alive, her trust in Linda evident in the way she rested her head on the woman's lap. As night fell, the storm outside intensified. The wind howled through the trees, and the temperature plummeted. Linda felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her, but she refused to sleep. She spent the night sitting beside Bella, stroking her fur and whispering words of encouragement. "You're not alone," she said softly. "We'll get through this together." At one point, Bella opened her eyes and lifted her head slightly. It was a small movement, but it filled Linda with hope. The next morning brought a pale gray light filtering through the snow-covered windows. Linda hadn't slept at all, but she felt a flicker of relief when she saw Bella's condition had stabilized. Her fever had broken during the night, and though she was still weak, she seemed more alert. "Good girl," Linda said, smiling through her exhaustion. "You're a fighter." Linda knew, however, that their struggle was far from over. The snowstorm had left her property buried under feet of snow, cutting her off from the outside world. Her supplies were limited, and Bella's recovery would require more than what Linda could provide on her own. But Linda was determined. As she sat beside Bella and the puppies, watching them huddle together near the warmth of the fire, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. For years, she had lived a quiet, solitary life, carrying the weight of her grief in silence. Now, with this small family depending on her, Linda found a reason to push forward. "You've brought life back into this old house," she said quietly, her gaze softening as she looked at the puppies. "I won't let you down." As the hours passed, Linda began to make plans. She would find a way to get help, no matter what it took. For now, she would focus on keeping Bella and the puppies safe and warm. The storm outside might rage on, but within the walls of her farmhouse, a different kind of warmth had taken root, the kind that came from love, hope, and the unyielding determination to protect those who could not protect themselves. The snowstorm showed no signs of relenting as another night fell over Coldridge. Linda wrapped herself in a thick quilt, her body aching from exhaustion but her mind refusing to rest. Bella lay nearby, her head resting on her paws, while the puppies slept soundly in a makeshift bed Linda had arranged from an old basket and soft towels. Linda stared at the flickering flames in the fireplace, her thoughts churning. Bella had stabilized, but the golden retriever still wasn't eating, and Linda's dwindling supplies weighed heavily on her mind. Without help, it was only a matter of time before their situation became critical. By the third morning, Linda made a decision. She couldn't wait any longer for the snow to melt or for someone to come looking for her. If they were going to survive, she needed to act. "I don't know if I can pull this off," she muttered, pacing back and forth in the living room. Bella's eyes followed her, calm but tired. Linda crouched beside her and ran a hand over the dog's matted fur. "You've already fought so hard," Linda said. "I won't let you down now." She decided to attempt the treacherous journey into town. It was risky. Linda was no longer as strong or agile as she once was, but the alternative was unthinkable. She retrieved her snow boots, an old parka, and a woolen scarf. In her kitchen, she packed a small bag with essentials, a thermos of coffee, a flashlight, and a whistle. Before leaving, Linda stoked the fire and arranged the basket of puppies closer to its warmth. She gently stroked Bella's head, her voice soft but determined. "I'll be back, Bella, I promise." As Linda stepped outside, the cold bit into her skin like 1,000 needles. The snow was knee-deep, making each step an arduous effort. The forest loomed dark and silent, its usual beauty overshadowed by the oppressive weight of the storm. The first stretch of the journey was manageable. Linda moved slowly but steadily, following the faint outline of the road buried beneath the snow. However, as she reached the denser part of the forest, the terrain became more treacherous. Snowdrifts rose like frozen waves, and the wind howled through the trees, whipping snow into her face. Linda pressed on, driven by the image of Bella and the puppies waiting for her at home. Each step was a battle, her legs burning with the effort of pushing through the snow. She clutched her whistle tightly, ready to use it if she lost her way. As the hours dragged on, fatigue began to take its toll. Linda paused to catch her breath. Leaning against a tree, her hands were numb despite the gloves, and her vision blurred as snowflakes clung to her lashes. "You can't stop now," she muttered, forcing herself to move again. "They're counting on you." Just as despair threatened to overtake her, Linda spotted a faint light through the trees. Her heart leaped. Someone's cabin, perhaps, summoning her last reserves of strength. She stumbled toward the light. The source was a small hunting lodge belonging to John Preston, a retired veterinarian who had moved to the area for its solitude. Linda had met him once years ago at a community event but hadn't spoken to him since. Still, she had no choice but to hope he would help. Linda banged on the door with what strength she had left. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The door creaked open to reveal John, a burly man in his 70s with kind but weathered features. He frowned, his eyes narrowing in concern as he took in Linda's disheveled appearance. "Linda Harper?" he asked, stepping aside to let her in. "What on earth are you doing out in this storm?" Linda barely managed to explain before collapsing into a chair by the fire. John listened attentively as she recounted the events of the past few days. When she finished, his expression softened. "You've done well to keep them alive this long," he said. "But you're right, they need more help than you can give them alone. Let me grab my gear." John quickly packed a bag with medical supplies, food, and warm blankets. He insisted on accompanying Linda back to her farmhouse despite the weather. The return journey was easier with John's help. He was more familiar with the terrain and carried most of the supplies, allowing Linda to focus on staying upright. By the time they reached the farmhouse, the sky was beginning to darken again. Inside, Bella lifted her head weakly as they entered, her eyes brightening at the sight of Linda. The puppies stirred, letting out soft cries as Linda knelt to check on them. John wasted no time examining Bella and the puppies. His professional demeanor was calm and reassuring, a stark contrast to the turmoil Linda had felt. "She's severely malnourished and dehydrated," John said after a thorough check. "But the good news is she's tough. With proper care, she should recover." Linda let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. "What do we do?" John outlined a plan: high-protein meals for Bella, a steady schedule of feedings for the puppies, and a warm, stable environment for their recovery. He gave Bella a vitamin injection and showed Linda how to massage the puppies to improve their circulation. As the night fell, Linda felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in days, she wasn't alone in her fight to save Bella and her puppies. "You're a good woman, Linda," John said as he prepared to leave. "Not everyone would have done what you did." Linda shook her head, her voice steady but filled with emotion. They needed me, and, if I'm honest, I think I needed them too. John paused at the door, a thoughtful look on his face. Call me if you need anything else. You're not alone in this. As he disappeared into the snowy night, Linda looked back at Bella and the puppies curled up by the fire. She felt a flicker of hope, fragile but growing. Together, they had made it through another day. Morning came slowly, painting the snowy landscape outside Linda's farmhouse in hues of pale gray and silver. Inside, the crackling fire provided a sharp contrast to the icy world beyond, filling the room with warmth. Linda stirred from her chair, where she had dozed off while keeping watch over Bella and the puppies. Bella seemed slightly more alert that morning. Her head rested on her paws, but her eyes tracked Linda's movements as she bustled about the kitchen, preparing a warm broth of chicken and rice. The golden retriever's tail gave a faint wag as Linda approached with the bowl. "Good girl," Linda said, her voice filled with encouragement. "You're already looking better." She knelt beside Bella, carefully spooning the broth toward her. Bella hesitated, sniffing the food before lapping at it weakly. It wasn't much, but it was progress, and Linda's heart swelled with relief. The puppies were another matter, though they seemed healthy and energetic. Their constant need for attention and feeding kept Linda on her toes. Charlie, the most adventurous of the three, had discovered how to climb out of the basket, leading to a game of hide-and-seek that left Linda laughing despite herself. Daisy, the smallest and shyest, clung to her siblings, while Finn's boundless energy made him the leader of their tiny pack. "Little troublemakers," Linda muttered with a smile as she scooped up Charlie for the third time that morning. Despite the moments of joy, a lingering sense of dread loomed over Linda. Bella's condition had stabilized, but her progress was slow. The golden retriever's once strong frame was still frail, and she spent most of her time resting. Linda couldn't shake the fear that Bella might not fully recover. Later that day, John returned as promised, his truck loaded with supplies. He brought bags of dog food, medical equipment, and even a few toys for the puppies. "Thought they might like something to chew on other than your furniture," he said with a chuckle as he handed Linda a small stuffed bone. Together, they worked to create a more comfortable space for Bella and the puppies. John showed Linda how to set up a proper feeding station and demonstrated techniques for checking Bella's hydration levels. His calm, methodical approach was a source of comfort for Linda, who had felt overwhelmed by the sheer responsibility of caring for the fragile family. "Her progress will take time," John said as he examined Bella. "But she's strong. I can see it in her eyes. She hasn't given up. And neither should you." John's words stayed with Linda as the days passed. She devoted herself fully to Bella's recovery, spending hours preparing meals, administering supplements, and massaging the dog's stiff limbs to keep her circulation flowing. One evening, as Linda sat by the fire with Bella lying at her feet, she noticed something extraordinary. Bella, who had barely moved for days, struggled to her feet. Her legs wobbled, and her body swayed, but she managed to take a few shaky steps toward the basket where her puppies were sleeping. "Bella!" Linda exclaimed, her hands flying to her mouth in shock. The golden retriever reached the basket and lowered her head, gently nudging each puppy as if to reassure herself they were safe. Tears welled in Linda's eyes as she watched the tender moment. "You're incredible," she whispered, kneeling beside Bella and stroking her fur. "I knew you could do it." The small victory filled Linda with renewed determination. Over the next several days, Bella began to regain her strength. Her appetite improved, and she started taking short walks around the living room, always keeping a watchful eye on her puppies. But just as things seemed to be turning a corner, another challenge arose. One cold morning, Linda noticed that Daisy, the smallest puppy, wasn't eating as much as her siblings. She seemed lethargic, her tiny body curling tightly against the others for warmth. "Not you too," Linda muttered, panic tightening her chest. She quickly called John, who promised to come over immediately. When he arrived, John examined Daisy carefully, his brow furrowed in concern. "She's underweight and dehydrated," he said. "Puppies this small can go downhill fast if we're not careful." Linda felt her stomach drop. "What can we do?" John handed Linda a small syringe. "We'll need to feed her directly for a while. Warm milk mixed with some extra nutrients. And keep her close to the fire. She needs all the warmth she can get." For the next several days, Linda focused all her energy on Daisy. She fed the puppy every 2 hours, even waking up in the middle of the night to ensure she didn't miss a feeding. She wrapped Daisy in a soft towel and held her close, hoping her own body heat would help. The effort was grueling, but Linda refused to give up. "You're going to make it, little one," she whispered during one late-night feeding, her voice thick with exhaustion. "You have to." Slowly but surely, Daisy began to improve. Her appetite returned, and her tiny tail wagged for the first time in days. Linda felt a swell of pride as she watched the puppy play with her siblings, her previous lethargy a distant memory. As Daisy recovered, Linda reflected on the past few weeks. The challenges had been relentless, but the bond she had formed with Bella and her puppies was unlike anything she had ever experienced. For the first time in years, her house felt alive, filled with warmth, movement, and the sound of life. Sitting by the fire one evening, Linda looked at Bella, who was now strong enough to walk confidently around the room. The golden retriever met her gaze, and in that moment, Linda felt a connection so deep it brought tears to her eyes. "You've given me so much more than I've given you," she said softly. "Thank you for letting me be a part of your journey." The days began to pass in a blur of activity. As Bella continued to regain her strength, Linda noticed a transformation in the golden retriever. Her once dull coat was now soft and beginning to shine, her ribs no longer visible beneath her fur. Bella was becoming more active, walking around the house and even nudging her puppies to play. The puppies, too, were thriving under Linda's care. Charlie, always the explorer, had developed a habit of chasing anything that moved, whether it was a falling sock or his own tail. Finn was the loudest, barking at the slightest provocation, his tiny voice both comical and endearing. Daisy, though still smaller than her brothers, had grown more confident, her energy catching up as she joined their mischievous antics. "You three are a handful," Linda muttered one morning as she tried to corral the puppies into their basket. Despite her words, her smile betrayed the joy they brought her. Bella, ever watchful, lay nearby, her amber eyes following her puppy's every move. Linda couldn't help but marvel at the bond between mother and pups. Bella's resilience and devotion were nothing short of extraordinary, and Linda found herself deeply inspired by the dog's unwavering strength. However, with each passing day, a nagging thought grew in Linda's mind. The puppies were growing quickly, and her small farmhouse was beginning to feel cramped. It was clear they needed more space to explore and play. Moreover, Linda knew she couldn't care for all 4 dogs indefinitely. Sitting by the fire one evening, Linda confided in John during one of his visits. "I don't know what I'm going to do when the time comes to let them go," she admitted, her voice heavy with emotion. John nodded thoughtfully. "It's never easy to say goodbye, but finding the right homes for them is the best thing you can do. They'll need families who can give them the love and attention they deserve." Linda sighed. "I know you're right. I've grown so attached to them." "Anyone would," John said with a kind smile. "But look at what you've done for them. They wouldn't have made it without you. That love will stay with them, no matter where they go." The following week, Linda made the difficult decision to begin looking for homes for the puppies. With John's help, she reached out to neighbors and friends in the small community of Coldridge, sharing the story of Bella and her miraculous recovery. Word spread quickly, and soon people began to show interest in adopting the puppies. Linda was both relieved and apprehensive. She wanted to ensure the puppies went to loving homes where they would be cherished as much as they were with her. She decided to meet each potential adopter personally. watching carefully as they interacted with the puppies. The first to visit was a young couple, Sam and Emily, who had recently moved to Coldridge. They immediately fell in love with Charlie, whose adventurous spirit matched their own. As the couple played with the puppy, Linda couldn't help but smile. "He's going to have a lot of fun with you too," Linda said, her voice tinged with bittersweet happiness. The next to find a home was Finn, a local farmer named George, who had lost his old sheepdog the year before, took an instant liking to the lively pup. Finn barked excitedly as George scratched his ears, and Linda knew they were a perfect match. Daisy, however, was a different story. Linda felt a special connection to the smallest puppy, having spent so many sleepless nights nursing her back to health. It wasn't until a retired schoolteacher named Eleanor visited that Linda finally felt at ease. Eleanor sat quietly with Daisy, speaking to her in soft tones and stroking her fur gently. Daisy, usually shy around strangers, wagged her tail and licked Eleanor's hand. "She's special," Eleanor said, looking at Linda with a warm smile. "I promise to give her all the love she deserves." Linda's heart ached as she watched Daisy leave with Eleanor, but she felt a deep sense of peace knowing the little pup would be in good hands. With each goodbye, Linda reminded herself that she was doing the right thing. The puppies were going to homes where they would be loved and cared for, and that was what mattered most. That evening, as the house grew quiet once more, Linda sat with Bella by the fire. The golden retriever rested her head on Linda's lap, her eyes closed in contentment. "Well, Bella," Linda said softly, running her fingers through the dog's fur. "It's just you and me now." Bella opened one eye and let out a soft huff, as if to agree. The weeks that followed brought a new sense of routine to Linda's life. With the puppies gone, the farmhouse felt emptier, but it wasn't the lonely emptiness Linda had once known. Bella's presence filled the house with warmth, and Linda found herself looking forward to their quiet evenings together. One day, Linda received a letter in the mail. It was from Sam and Emily, the couple who had adopted Charlie. Enclosed was a photo of the puppy, now growing into his oversized paws, playing in their backyard. "He's already learned how to sit and fetch." The letter read, "Thank you for giving us such a wonderful companion." Linda smiled as she read the letter aloud to Bella. "Looks like he's doing just fine." Similar letters followed, each one bringing news of the puppies' happy new lives. Finn had taken to following George around the farm, barking enthusiastically at the sheep. Daisy had become Eleanor's constant companion, joining her on long walks and curling up at her feet while she read. As Linda sat by the fire that evening, Bella by her side, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her small act of kindness had created ripples that spread far beyond her little farmhouse, touching the lives of others in ways she hadn't anticipated. "You saved them, Bella," Linda said, her voice full of gratitude. "And in a way, you saved me too." The arrival of spring brought a new energy to Coldridge. The snow melted away, revealing lush green fields and blooming wildflowers. Linda's farmhouse, once surrounded by an endless expanse of white, now basked in the vibrant colors of the season. For the first time in years, Linda found herself looking forward to the changes that spring brought. Bella, now fully recovered, had become Linda's constant companion. The golden retriever followed her everywhere, whether it was tending to the small vegetable garden, collecting mail from the box at the end of the driveway, or simply sitting together on the porch to watch the sunset. One morning, as Linda sipped her coffee on the porch, she noticed Bella perk up, her ears twitching. Moments later, a familiar pickup truck pulled into the driveway. John stepped out, carrying a wooden sign under one arm. "What have you got there?" Linda called, setting her mug down as she walked toward him. "A little surprise," John replied with a grin. He held up the sign, which was painted in bright colors and read, "Bella's Garden." Linda's eyes filled with tears as she ran her fingers over the letters. "John, this is beautiful. Thank you. You've done so much for her," John said, setting the sign in the soil at the entrance to the garden. She deserves her own little corner of the world. Bella seemed to sense the significance of the moment, wagging her tail as she sniffed the sign. Linda chuckled and knelt beside the dog, scratching behind her ears. "You hear that, girl? It's your garden now." The gesture from John was just one of many that reminded Linda of the support she had found in the community. News of Bella's recovery and the story of how Linda had saved the golden retriever and her puppies had spread far beyond Coldridge. Letters poured in from people across the state, some offering words of encouragement, others sharing their own stories of rescuing animals in need. One day, Linda received a particularly touching letter from a young girl named Abby. The letter was written in neat, careful handwriting and accompanied by a drawing of Bella and her puppies. "Dear Miss Linda," the letter began, "my mom told me about how you saved Bella and her babies. I think you're a hero. When I grow up, I want to help animals too. Thank you for being so kind." Linda hung the drawing on her refrigerator, where it joined several others that local children had sent. Each time she glanced at it, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the weeks passed, Linda began to think about how she could give back to the community that had embraced her and Bella's story. The idea came to her one evening as she watched Bella nap by the fire. "What do you think about starting something new, girl?" Linda asked, though she knew Bella couldn't answer. "Maybe we can help others the way we helped you." The next day, Linda reached out to the local animal shelter. She had donated to the shelter occasionally in the past, but this time, she wanted to do more. After speaking with the director, she volunteered to help care for the animals and organize adoption events. Bella accompanied Linda on her first visit to the shelter, immediately becoming a favorite among the staff and the other dogs. Her calm demeanor seemed to soothe even the most nervous animals, and Linda couldn't help but feel proud of how far the golden retriever had come. "Looks like you've got yourself a little ambassador," the shelter director said with a smile as Bella wagged her tail at a shy Labrador mix. Linda's days became busier as she took on more responsibilities at the shelter. She cleaned kennels, walked dogs, and even helped with the paperwork for adoptions. Bella was by her side every step of the way, her presence a constant source of comfort and inspiration. In addition to her work at the shelter, Linda began visiting local schools to share her story. First, she was hesitant. Public speaking wasn't something she had ever been comfortable with. But with Bella by her side, she found the courage to step in front of the students. Linda told them about the snowy morning when Bella and her puppies appeared at her door, about the challenges they had faced together, and the bond that had formed between them. Her message was simple: kindness, no matter how small, could make a world of difference. The students listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. Afterward, they crowded around Bella, eager to pet her and ask Linda questions. "Did you know you were going to save her?" one boy asked. Linda smiled. "I didn't know what I was going to do at first. I just knew I couldn't walk away. Sometimes, that's all it takes. A little courage and a big heart." As Linda's work in the community grew, so did her sense of fulfillment. She no longer felt like the lonely widow who had once spent her days in silence. Instead, she felt connected to Bella, to the people she had met, and to the animals she was helping. One evening, Linda sat on the porch with Bella at her feet, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The farmhouse was quiet, but it wasn't the kind of silence that weighed heavy on her soul. It was a peaceful silence, filled with the contentment of knowing she had found her purpose. "You've changed everything, Bella," Linda said, her voice soft, "and I'll never stop being grateful for that." Bella let out a soft huff and nuzzled Linda's hand, her eyes full of trust and love. Together, they watched as the stars began to appear, their light a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope. The farmhouse felt quieter now that the puppies were no longer there. But Linda found comfort in the updates she received from their new families. Each letter, photo, or phone call reminded her that she had made the right choice, even if letting go had been difficult. One crisp spring morning, Linda sat by the window, sorting through a stack of mail. A letter from Sam and Emily caught her attention. They had adopted Charlie, the most adventurous of the litter, and were eager to share their latest updates. "Dear Linda," the letter began, "Charlie has brought so much joy to our lives. He's grown into his paws and has become quite the explorer. Just last week, he found a hidden trail in the woods behind our house, and now it's his favorite spot to play. We're so grateful for him." Enclosed was a photo of Charlie, his golden fur shimmering in the sunlight as he stood proudly on a hilltop. Linda smiled, running her fingers over the image. "That boy was always curious," she said aloud, glancing at Bella, who lay at her feet. "Looks like he's found his place in the world." Later that afternoon, another letter arrived, this time from George, the farmer who had adopted Finn. George wrote about how the lively pup had quickly become a fixture on the farm, herding sheep with surprising enthusiasm. "He's got a lot of energy," the letter read, "but he's smart, too. Sometimes I think he knows what I'm going to do before I do it. He's not just a dog, he's a partner." Linda laughed softly. "That sounds like Finn, doesn't it, Bella? Always the little leader." The letters didn't just bring Linda joy, they also sparked curiosity in the local community. As neighbors and friends heard about the puppies' new lives, they often stopped by to ask Linda about her experience. Many were inspired to adopt animals themselves, and Linda found herself becoming an unofficial ambassador for rescue efforts in Coldridge. One day, Linda received a visit from Eleanor, the retired schoolteacher who had adopted Daisy. Eleanor arrived with Daisy in tow, the little dog's tail wagging furiously as she bounded into the farmhouse. "She's doing wonderfully," Eleanor said, watching as Daisy raced over to Bella and nuzzled her affectionately. "I thought it was time for a little reunion." The sight of Daisy brought tears to Linda's eyes, the small puppy she had once nursed through cold. Sleepless nights was now a healthy, confident dog. Daisy's energy filled the room, and for a moment, it was as if the farmhouse had returned to the bustling days when all three puppies had been there. Over tea, Linda and Eleanor shared stories about the puppies. Eleanor spoke of how Daisy had become her constant companion, joining her on long walks and curling up at her feet while she read. "She's brought so much joy to my life," Eleanor said, "and it's all thanks to you." Linda shook her head. "I didn't do it alone. Bella was the real hero." As if on cue, Bella let out a soft bark, her tail thumping against the floor. The room erupted in laughter, and for the first time in a long while, Linda felt a deep sense of contentment. After Eleanor and Daisy left, Linda sat with Bella on the porch, watching the sunset. The golden retriever rested her head on Linda's lap, her eyes half closed in peaceful relaxation. "You've done so much good, Bella," Linda said, her voice soft. "Your puppies are thriving, and they're bringing happiness to so many people." Bella let out a small huff, her tail wagging lazily. But as much as Linda cherished the letters and visits, she couldn't help but notice the growing gap left by the puppy's absence. Though Bella filled her days with companionship, there were moments when the farmhouse felt too quiet. One evening, as Linda flipped through a scrapbook she had started, an idea began to form. She looked at the photos of Bella and the puppies, at the letters from their new families, and felt a tug at her heart. "What if we could help even more?" Linda murmured. The next morning, she called John to share her idea. "I've been thinking," she said, "what if we started a program to foster animals in need? There are so many out there, and this farmhouse, it feels like it was meant to be a haven." John was immediately supportive. "That's a wonderful idea, Linda. With your experience and Bella's influence, could really make a difference." The plan took shape quickly, with John's connections in the veterinary world and Linda's growing network in the community. They began organizing a foster program that would focus on helping animals recover and find permanent homes. Within weeks, the first foster dog arrived, a timid border collie named Max who had been abandoned during the winter. Bella seemed to sense Max's nervousness, staying close to him and offering gentle reassurance. Watching Bella guide Max reminded Linda of the first days after Bella and her puppies had arrived at the farmhouse. She marveled at how much had changed since that snowy morning, at how far they had come. The farmhouse began to fill with life once more, as more animals came through the program. Each one brought its own challenges and rewards, but Linda embraced every moment. With Bella by her side, she knew they could handle anything. On a warm spring evening, as Linda sat on the porch with Bella and Max at her feet, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The quiet life she had once known was now filled with purpose, connection, and love. Who would have thought? "Huh?" she said, scratching Bella's ears. "This old farmhouse has become a home for so many." Bella wagged her tail, her amber eyes filled with trust and gratitude. Together, they watched the stars begin to dot the sky, their light a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always the promise of something brighter. As the foster program grew, Linda found herself busier than she had ever imagined. The farmhouse, once a quiet refuge, had become a sanctuary for animals in need. Each day was filled with feeding, cleaning, and caring for the animals, but Linda welcomed the bustling energy. Bella, ever the gentle matriarch, became the heart of the operation. She had a calming effect on every new arrival. From nervous kittens to skittish dogs, it was as if she knew exactly what they needed, whether it was a nuzzle of reassurance or a steady presence to help them feel safe. One afternoon, as Linda sat at the kitchen table sorting through adoption applications, she noticed Bella lying near the door, watching a pair of young puppies wrestle playfully on the floor. Bella's tail wagged lazily, her eyes filled with the same warmth Linda had seen the first day she arrived at the farmhouse. "You're a natural," Linda said, smiling at the golden retriever. "I couldn't do this without you." Linda's words were more than a sentiment. They were the truth. Bella had become a symbol of resilience and hope, not just for Linda but for the entire community. Her story had inspired others to step forward and help animals in need, and donations to the program poured in steadily. One day, Linda received a call from the editor of the local newspaper. The editor, a kind woman named Susan, wanted to write a feature about Bella and the foster program. "Your story has touched so many people," Susan said over the phone. "I think it's time more people heard about the incredible work you're doing." Linda hesitated. She wasn't one for attention, but the idea of raising awareness for the program appealed to her. After discussing it with John, she agreed to the interview. The following week, Susan arrived at the farmhouse with a photographer in tow. Bella greeted them at the door, her tail wagging as if she understood she was the star of the day. During the interview, Linda shared the story of how Bella and her puppies had changed her life. She spoke about the challenges they had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the joy of seeing the puppies thrive in their new homes. "Bella taught me that kindness can change lives," Linda said, her voice steady but emotional. "She gave me a second chance at finding purpose, and I'm just trying to pass that on." The article, titled "A Golden Heart: How Bella and Linda Built a Haven for Animals," was published the following week. The story quickly gained traction, spreading beyond Coldridge to neighboring towns and even further. Letters and emails poured in, many from people who had been inspired to start their own rescue efforts. Linda read each letter carefully, often sharing them with Bella as they sat by the fire. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a young man named Ryan, who had recently lost his dog to old age. "Reading about Bella reminded me of why I fell in love with animals in the first place." The letter read, "I've decided to volunteer at my local shelter in her honor. Thank you for sharing your story." Tears filled Linda's eyes as she finished reading. "Look at that, Bella," she said, holding the letter up. "You're making a difference in places we've never even been." The impact of the article extended beyond the emotional. Donations to the foster program increased dramatically, allowing Linda to expand her efforts. She hired a part-time assistant, a bright and enthusiastic young woman named Claire, to help with the growing number of animals coming through the program. Claire quickly bonded with Bella, often joking that the golden retriever was her co-manager. Bella, in turn, seemed to take to Claire, following her around the farmhouse and watching her work with the animals. As the program flourished, Linda began to think about its future. The farmhouse had been a perfect starting point, but it was beginning to feel cramped with the number of animals they were helping. Linda discussed the idea with John and Claire, both of whom agreed that a larger facility would allow them to do even more. "I've been saving for years," Linda said during one of their meetings. "I think it's time to put that money to use. Bella's given me a second chance, and I want to make sure her legacy lives on." John smiled. "You've got a good heart, Linda. Let's make it happen." The community rallied around the idea, and within months, they had raised enough funds to purchase a larger property on the outskirts of Coldridge. The new facility, complete with spacious kennels, outdoor play areas, and a small veterinary clinic, became the official home of the Bella's Haven Rescue Center. On the day of the grand opening, Linda stood at the entrance with Bella by her side. A crowd of supporters had gathered, many of whom had adopted animals from the program. Among them were Sam and Emily with Charlie, George with Finn, and Eleanor with Daisy. As Linda looked out at the crowd, she felt a swell of pride and gratitude. She knelt beside Bella, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "We did it, girl. This is all because of you." Bella leaned into Linda, her tail wagging as the crowd applauded. The golden retriever had come a long way from the trembling, malnourished dog Linda had found in the snow. She was now a symbol of hope, her story a testament to the power of love and resilience. That evening, as the sun set over the new rescue center, Linda sat with Bella on a bench overlooking the property. The sounds of barking dogs and laughing children filled the air, a reminder of the vibrant community they had built. "You've changed everything, Bella," Linda said, her voice full of gratitude. "And this is just the beginning." Bella rested her head on Linda's lap, her eyes closing in contentment. Together, they watched the stars appear, their light a reminder of how far they had come and how much further they could go. Chapter 8. The Legacy of Bella's Journey. The farmhouse buzzed with activity as Linda and John prepared for the community's first ever Adopt and Foster Day. Over the past few months, their program had gained traction, with more people eager to help animals in need. Flyers had been distributed around Coldridge, inviting families to visit the farmhouse to meet animals available for adoption or fostering. "This is bigger than I imagined," Linda said, glancing at the growing crowd gathering on the lawn. Children laughed as they played with puppies, while adults chatted with volunteers about fostering options. Bella sat proudly by Linda's side, her golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. "She's become quite the celebrity," John said with a chuckle, nodding toward Bella. Linda smiled. "She deserves every bit of it. None of this would have happened without her." Throughout the day, Linda watched as people connected with the animals. A young boy hugged a shy Labrador mix, a couple gently cradled a kitten, and an older man sat quietly with an aging beagle resting at his feet. It was a sight that filled Linda with pride. Midway through the event, Linda was approached by a journalist from the state newspaper who had heard about the program. The woman, a friendly brunette named Rachel, was eager to interview Linda about her journey. "Your story has inspired so many," Rachel said, notebook in hand. "Can you tell me what motivated you to start this program?" Linda glanced at Bella, who was lying peacefully by her chair, and then back at Rachel. "It all started on a snowy morning," Linda began, her voice soft but steady. She recounted the day Bella and her puppies appeared at her door, the challenges they had faced together, and the overwhelming joy of seeing them thrive. "Bella taught me about resilience and unconditional love," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I realized there were so many others like her. Animals that just needed someone to believe in them. I couldn't turn my back on that." As Rachel scribbled notes, Linda felt a warmth spread through her chest. Sharing her story wasn't just about the past. It was about creating a future where kindness and compassion could flourish. By the end of the event, several animals had found new homes, and many more families had signed up to foster. Linda stood by the farmhouse porch, watching as the last few guests said their goodbyes. "You've built something incredible here," John said, joining her. "I didn't do it alone," Linda replied, her eyes following Bella as the golden retriever trotted alongside a group of children. Bella's been the heart of it all. The weeks that followed were filled with letters, phone calls, and visits from the families who had adopted or fostered animals through the program. Each update was a testament to the power of second chances, and Linda cherished every story. One evening, Linda received a letter from Eleanor, the retired teacher who had adopted Daisy. Enclosed was a photo of Daisy sitting by Eleanor's garden, a patch of colorful flowers blooming behind her. "Daisy has found her place here," the letter read. "She's not just a pet, she's family. Thank you for bringing her into my life." Linda's eyes welled with tears as she read the letter aloud to Bella. "Your little girl is doing just fine," she said, her voice soft. The success of the program didn't go unnoticed. The local mayor invited Linda and Bella to a town hall meeting to share their story and discuss plans for expanding animal welfare initiatives in Coldridge. Nervous but excited, Linda accepted the invitation. On the day of the meeting, Linda stood before a small crowd in the town hall, Bella sitting calmly at her feet. She spoke about the importance of kindness, the joy of fostering connections, and the lessons she had learned from Bella and her puppies. "This isn't just about animals," Linda said, her voice clear. "It's about creating a community where compassion leads the way. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life." The room erupted in applause, and Bella let out a cheerful bark, as if to join in the celebration. The recognition fueled Linda's determination to continue her work. She and John began collaborating with nearby towns to establish similar programs, sharing resources and offering guidance. Bella often accompanied Linda to these meetings, her presence a reminder of the program's humble beginnings. As the months passed, the farmhouse transformed into a hub of activity. Animals came and went, each leaving a mark on Linda's heart. Some stayed for only a short time before finding their forever homes, while others, like Bella, found a permanent place in Linda's life. One afternoon, as Linda tended to her garden, she noticed Bella lying in the shade of a tree, her head resting on her paws. The golden retriever had aged gracefully, her muzzle now flecked with gray. "You've been through so much, haven't you, girl?" Linda said, kneeling beside her. Bella looked up, her amber eyes filled with the same trust and love that had first drawn Linda to her. That evening, Linda sat on the porch with Bella by her side, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She reflected on the journey they had shared, the snowy morning when everything changed, the challenges they had overcome, and the lives they had touched along the way. "You've given me more than I could ever repay," Linda said softly, stroking Bella's fur. "And I promise to keep paying it forward." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Linda felt a deep sense of peace. Bella's legacy wasn't just in the lives of her puppies or the animals they had helped. It was in the hearts of everyone who had been inspired by their story. The farmhouse, once a quiet refuge for a grieving widow, had become a beacon of hope and compassion. And as Linda sat beside her loyal companion, she knew their journey was far from over. Together, they had created something beautiful, something that would continue to grow, just like the garden that now bore Bella's name. The seasons came and went, each one bringing new changes to Coldridge and Linda's farmhouse. The foster program flourished, helping countless animals find homes. Bella remained a constant presence, her gentle demeanor continuing to inspire both Linda and everyone who visited. One summer afternoon, Linda sat in the garden beneath a shady oak tree, Bella lying at her feet. The golden retriever's muzzle was now entirely gray, and her movements had slowed, but her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. She watched the animals playing in the yard, two foster puppies chasing each other, while a rescued cat lounged on the porch rail. "You've created all this, you know," Linda said, reaching down to scratch behind Bella's ears. "None of it would exist without you." Bella let out a soft huff and nuzzled Linda's hand. Despite the joy surrounding her, Linda couldn't ignore the signs that Bella was beginning to struggle. She tired more easily, and her appetite had waned. Linda spent more time with her, ensuring she was comfortable and cherished. The thought of losing Bella was unbearable, but Linda knew that their journey together had given them both so much. One quiet evening, Linda found Bella lying by the fireplace, her favorite spot in the house. The golden retriever looked up as Linda approached, her amber eyes filled with a love that needed no words. Linda sat beside her, stroking her fur and whispering softly. "You've done so much, Bella," Linda said, her voice trembling. "You've given me a second chance at life. I'll never be able to thank you enough." Bella rested her head on Linda's lap, her breathing slow but steady. Linda stayed with her through the night, memories of their time together filling her mind. The following morning, Bella passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by the warmth and love she had always given. Linda held her, tears streaming down her face, but her heart was filled with gratitude for the years they had shared. The news of Bella's passing spread quickly through Coldridge. The community rallied around Linda, offering their condolences and sharing stories of how Bella had touched their lives. Letters poured in from families who had adopted animals through the program, each one a reminder of the legacy Bella had left behind. A few days later, John visited Linda with an idea. "We should do something to honor Bella," he said. "She's been the heart of everything we've built here." Together, they planned a memorial event at the farmhouse. The community gathered to celebrate Bella's life and the impact she had made. Children brought drawings of Bella, adults shared stories of her kindness, and a local artist unveiled a painting of her that would hang in the town hall. Linda spoke at the event, her voice steady despite the emotion in her heart. "Bella taught me about love, resilience, and the power of kindness. She showed us that even the smallest act of compassion can change the world." This program, this community, it all began with her. As the crowd applauded, Linda felt a deep sense of peace. Bella's legacy would live on, not just in the memories of those who loved her, but in the lives of every animal the program would continue to save. In the weeks that followed, Linda dedicated herself to expanding the foster program, ensuring it would continue to grow and thrive. She often thought of Bella, especially during quiet moments in the garden or by the fireplace. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, a soft breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it a sense of calm. Linda closed her eyes and smiled, feeling Bella's presence in her heart. "You're still here," she whispered, "and you always will be."